Hello everyone, good day. I am Jomarick Mapindan, your teacher presenter for today's episode of DepEd tele-turuan. Today, I will explain how the organs of each organ system work together, as well as citing some examples of helpful habits that promote proper functioning of this organ system. For this episode, we will talk about the respiratory system, urinary system, circulatory system, and nervous system. Now, let's start with the human respiratory system. Your body needs oxygen in order to live. Breathing is a continuous cycle, and an average person breathes 20,000 times a day. During inhalation, your body takes oxygen, which is used in many body processes. During exhalation, your body expels carbon dioxide, a waste gas from certain body processes. Breathing is a process mechanism performed by your respiratory system. The primary function of the respiratory system is to allow the exchange of gases in the body. Specifically, it distributes oxygen to the different parts of the body and releases carbon dioxide out of the body. The respiratory system has an upper tract and a lower tract. The upper tract consists of the nose, nasal cavity, and the pharynx. The lower tract consists of larynx, trachea, bronchial tubes, and the lungs. The nose is the outer part of the respiratory system. It is mostly made up of cartilage, which makes the nose flexible and strong. The nose has two openings called nostrils, which leads to the nasal cavity. The lining of the nasal cavity is moist because of mucus. Tiny hair called cilia also line in this cavity. The cilia and mucus filter out the dust and dirt that comes with the air you inhale. They also warm and moisten the air that enters the body. You normally breathe through your nose and not through the mouth. If you look at the mirror and open your mouth wide, you can see the back part of your mouth arc into a tube. This tube or throat cavity is called the pharynx. It is connected to both the nose and mouth and acts as passageway for both air and food. This is why you can still breathe even if your nose is blocked due to colds. Structures called tonsils are found in the opening of the pharynx. They trap and destroy bacteria that enter the body via nose and mouth. When you touch your neck while you speak, you can feel some vibrations in your throat. This is because the larynx or the voice box. It directs air to the windpipe and contains vocal cords for vocalization. It is found at the lower end of the pharynx. When you talk, the vocal cords in the larynx vibrate and sound is produced. The structure called epiglottis is found covering the larynx. When you breathe, the epiglottis is raised and air flows into the larynx and to the lungs. When you swallow, the epiglottis is pressed down the opening of the larynx to prevent food from entering. Choking happens when food accidentally goes into the trachea. The trachea, or a windpipe, is a tube at the bottom of the larynx. It splits into the left and right bronchial tubes that direct air to the left and right lungs. It is lined with mucus that helps prevent dust particles and other things from entering the lungs. The trachea divides into two branches, each entering a lung. These tubes are called bronchial tubes, which are tubes within the lungs that direct air into bronchioles and lets air out of the lungs, and they branch into even smaller tubes called bronchioles, which are smaller bronchial tubes within the lungs that direct air to small air sacs known as alveoli, which is bronchial terminal sacs that are surrounded by capillaries and are the respiratory surfaces of the lungs. The exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs in the alveoli. The absorbed oxygen is transported throughout the body through the bloodstream. which release carbon dioxide, is inhaled. The lungs are enclosed in a coating called pleura, which allows the lungs to slide freely as they expand and contract when you breathe. Below the lungs is a dome-shaped muscle called diaphragm. Breathing refers to the process of alternate inhaling and exhaling movements. During inhalation, the diaphragm contracts or moves down, which causes the chest cavity to expand, allowing air to move into lungs. The movement of ribcage and diaphragm causes your chest cavity to expand, lowering the air pressure in the lungs. As a result, air rushes into your lungs, causing them to expand and fill the chest cavity. During exhalation, the diaphragm relaxes and returns to its normal resting position. As you breathe out, your chest falls and contracts. In the breathing cycle, inhaling and exhaling moves air into and out of the lungs. The outer movement made by the diaphragm and the muscles in between your ribs provide the mechanical energy for breathing. Caring for your respiratory system is important. Healthful habits should be practiced to promote proper functioning of the respiratory system. Today, coronavirus disease or COVID-19, which is an infectious and contagious respiratory illness caused by a newly discovered coronavirus, can be avoided as well as other respiratory ailments and stop the spreading if the following are observed. Wash your hands regularly with soap and water or clean them with alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain at least 1 meter distance between you and the people coughing or sneezing. Avoid touching your face. Cover your mouth and nose when coughing or sneezing. Stay home if you feel unwell. Refrain from smoking and other activities that weaken the lungs. Eat plenty of fruits and vegetables. And lastly, consult a doctor for any sign of respiratory ailment. So always remember the different parts of the respiratory system. It includes the nasal cavity, the nose, the pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchial tubes, and the lungs. We're done with the parts and function of the respiratory system. At this moment, let's check if you learned something. These parts are lined with mucus that help filter dust particles. Letter A, nasal cavity and larynx. Letter B, nasal cavity and lungs. Letter C, nasal cavity and epiglottis. Or letter D, nasal cavity and trachea. The answer is letter D, nasal cavity and trachea. What is the function of the tonsils? Is it letter A? They warm and moisten the air that enters through the nose. Letter B, they trap and destroy bacteria that enters through the nose. Letter C, they prevent food from entering the windpipe. Or letter D, they vibrate in order to produce sound. The answer is letter B, they trap and destroy bacteria that enter through the nose. What happens during inhalation? Letter A, the ribs and diaphragm contract. Letter B, the ribs and diaphragm relax. Letter C, the chest cavity becomes smaller. Or letter D, air rushes out of the lungs. The answer is letter A, the ribs and diaphragm contract. Where does the exchange of gases take place? Is it letter A, trachea? Letter B, bronchi? Letter C, alveoli? Letter D, nostrils? The answer is letter C, alveoli. Where is the diaphragm located? Letter A, below the voice box or larynx. Letter B, covering the top of the voice box or larynx. Letter C, at the bottom of the trachea. Or letter D, below the lungs. The answer is letter D, below the lungs. There you have it. Please stay tuned for our next lesson about urinary system and how the organs of this organ system work together. We'll be right back after a few reminders.